Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. Just a suggestion to some people who ask for pictures. This is the sort of video or live stream that, say, you drive a truck or you're driving to work in the morning and you want to listen to something where imagery and pictures aren't an issue, or you're on the train or the bus or something like that, and you want to listen to it on your iPod. You put in some headphones and you can listen to this without worrying about the pictures or whatever. So this is just a suggestion. This is a radio, if you like, broadcast, and you can fit that into when you're traveling and where you don't need, or it's difficult to, for example, driving a car or a truck where you don't need to look at pictures. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of remigration. And there are two aspects to this, but the primary one, and there's a few articles doing the rounds on the internet where they're claiming that third world peasants are coming to the West, but when they realise just how expensive the cost of living is in the West, and how they have, if the Western government stops or limits or reduces the handouts and the freebies. And so they're happy to come. Well, there's freebies, of course, but where they have to go out and work to get by, and again, the high cost of living, then they say to themselves that, hey, this is not what I thought it was. This is like really hard to get by. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the country that I came from, whether it be the peasant rural life in the rural peasant village or whatever. Now, there are some people who sort of, you'd say they're the lower end of the middle class in some of these third world countries. They can get work intermittently, gig type work, but they do kind of all right. But they think, hey, it's going to be a whole lot better if I go to the West. Or there's the people in the rural, peasant villages who get seduced typically by UN or NGO globalist agitators to say, hey, you should go to the West, illiterate peasant, and who's never had a job, and the world is going to be your oyster. So now let's just examine this, because I was talking to a guy about it. He works as an orderly in a hospital, just doing like grunt sort of work, and he's from, I think, Peru or somewhere like that, and he comes from a rural village, and they all, the whole wider family lives in the one room hut and so on. But he's thinking about, it seems to have almost made up his mind, he's going to go back to Peru. Now, why is that? He's managed to somehow bullshit his way into a first world country, even though he's illiterate in his own language, as he admits. I mean, how does someone like that get in? They're illiterate in their own language. They can't speak English, or hardly any, and they're obviously illiterate in English. And they've got no skills, no work, no qualifications, but somehow he gets to be a migrant into Australia. I don't know how that even happens. Now, if he was, had a PhD in like a real McCoy PhD and something, he had work skills, okay, well, sure, you can sort of maybe understand that. But this guy's none of that, and he's a midget. He's not even 5 foot tall, for goodness sakes. So anyway, he points out that the cost of living is so great. Now, sure, if he wants to live in a place where there are 20 people to a 2-bedroom apartment or something, sure, he can kind of manage there. But he says the cost of food, the cost of rent, the cost of transport, the cost of getting around, cost of buying a car, you need to have this, you need to have that, you need to have so and so. So there's a certain sort of ambient, if you like, cost that he has to meet, and he's saying that by the time he's paid all the bills and done all the stuff, that really his standard of living, his quality of life, well, his quality of life's lower because he's not surrounded by family and people he's known for generations or something, but his quality of life is actually not very high at all. And the point he makes, if it wasn't for the infrastructure in the West, like all the sealed roads and the sidewalks and the pavements and the public utility, like the hospitals, the schools, and if it wasn't for the wider sort of public infrastructure, there would be no benefit to him at all being in the West. It's only because all these things are here built by generations of white people. It's only because all these things are here that makes the West attractive. If you took that away, then the fact that he can get low-paid full-time employment, is something of a benefit. But the point he makes is, again, the cost of living is so high, and he's like a casual sort of. I don't think he's got a full-time gig there at the hospital because he's a casual. He's always in danger of being laid off, or his hours reduced, and then he can't pay the bills or can't put food on the table. So now he's become quite skilled at accessing government services, so he's able to, he knows where all the soup kitchens are. He's got all that sort of stuff. So he's still accessing government services or charity services that he's not really entitled to, but no one questions it because he pretends he can't speak any English at all and just fronts up and uses sign language, so they just give it to him. So he effectively has almost no food bills, but nonetheless, even in spite of that, he misses his wider family, and there's trouble getting his family over in this family reunion or chain migration. And if he could bring his whole village over to Australia, then it would change things, but it's kind of taking too long. And so he's thinking of going back. So he's telling you, what's life like in the village? Well, they own the house. It's not much, but they own the house. Or, I mean, you can't call it a house, but they own the place where they live. So there's no mortgage payments, or there's no rent to be paid. They don't have the sort of physical household infrastructure that needs maintenance from a skilled, like an electrician or a plumber or something like that. So they've got no electricity, and they've got no running water or plumb. They've got there's a well, or a couple of wells in the village. If you want to, you just go out into they cut like a ditch in the village. That's where you just go and drop a shit or piss in that. So there's no plumbing to take care of. There's nothing that needs repair or maintenance that can't be done easily by the people in the village. There are no skills required. They grow a lot of their own food, and they barter a lot. So they don't have to find money really on a day-to-day basis. That's not an issue. There are plenty of animals in the forest, so you can go and kill a few of those and get your meat. So the vegetables they grow, they make their own sort of alcohol, their own moonshine. So that's sort of, they don't. So none of the costs that we have in day-to-day living in the West, they don't really have those costs. Sure, there are times when they need money and that sort of thing. Now, they've managed to get mobile phones, or some of them have. There's a few in the village, and they sort of all sit around and watch it. Now, they see the West with all the fancy cars, the hot-looking chicks, all the paved roads, the hospitals, the schools, this, that, next thing, universities, and the NGO agitators come around and say, well, that can be yours. Those people have only got it because they stole it from you. So why don't you go and get it back? So they, and they're simple people. They sucker for this sort of insane propaganda. But the reality is that his quality of life is much better. When you go to third world countries, even for people who are employed, like in some of these third world countries, if you're getting paid $5,000 a year, you're kicking ass. You're going places. You're a heavy hitter at $5,000 a year. Money that wouldn't be enough to get you to walk around the block and back again in a first world country is enough to be a heavy hitter in these third world countries. And you can get enough. For example, to get enough rice for a family of 4 to eat for a week is $2 I'm just thinking of one third world country I was in recently. $2 for the week for rice. And you get a lot of people growing their own vegetables and, this sort of thing. And I didn't realize, I went to one of the local sort of markets and looking at the price people were paying for vegetables over the counter, and everything ranging from things like chilies to beans and legumes and all that sort of stuff, and it's very, very cheap. So you can eat, a family of 4 can eat handsomely for $25 a week. An undreamed of amount of money for for people to live in a first world country, even at an entry level type diet. So you've got no rent, you've got no electricity bills, you've got no infrastructure to maintain. You're growing most of your own vegetables. A lot of it's barter, and it's $2 a week to buy rice, and so on. So it's very cheap to live. You're around your family, you're around the people that you've known, forever, since the day you're born. So quality of life, it's very cheap to live, and the quality of life, as in your sort of cultural type village existence, is much higher in the place where you've come from. So this guy at the hospital worker is saying, well, unless you can get a much higher income, then why would he stay? And then, as he points out, with a higher income, he would like to do things like live independently. He doesn't want to have to live, because these are, he lives with a bunch of Peruvians, but they're all from all over Peru, and they're different tribes, different places, and he doesn't really like it. I mean, he does it to get by financially, but he doesn't really like it. He'd much rather have either people from his own village or district to live with, or live independently. But he needs a certain amount of money to do it. He'd like to live with middle class, good, well-behaved middle class white people, because he likes the way they behave and everything. But he can't play in their league. He doesn't have enough money to do it, and that sort of thing. So all the dreams and sort of fanciful notions that he had when he was in his rural peasant village, that's not playing out into reality. So he's thinking he's going to go back, unless he can get his girlfriend from the village to come over, and they procreate, get an anchor baby, and that sort of thing. So anyway, outside of that, he's thinking it's not worth it. Now, there's another tier of remigration as well, where illegals often are fronting up at, say, I don't know, somewhere in Scandinavia as an example, but they only get 6 or 12 months of freebie handouts, and after that they have to get a job, or somehow they've either got to attend full-time language classes. There are certain requirements if their benefits are going to continue. So they take all the free stuff for as long as they can, and as soon as that stops, they've got, there's a network of remigration people smugglers. So they just move to the next soft touch Western country, first world country, and then they get another 12 months of benefits. So they can actually ping pong around, say, Europe, Western Europe as an example, and they can spend 5 years there getting endless free handouts, just moving from one free handout place to the next, and no one saying, hold on a minute, you've just spent 12 months getting freebies over there. You're not going to come here and get freebies as well. But that doesn't happen. So they can just keep on going and getting. So there's a huge remigration network of going to where the freebie handouts are the most generous, or whatever. So there's two levels, or two tiers of it. But once the freebie handouts end, and they've got to actually work and do that, I was surprised by the amount of them decide, not worth it, I'll go back. They've had a 5-year vacation at the expense of the Western taxpayer, and so some might stay, some might go, some will leave, then come back with relatives next time. And I mean, it's a massive scam. But this idea of remigration is quite a few Indians. Again, the sort of Indians that probably could get a job, not a well-paying one, because remember, the average wage in India is less than $2,000 a year. But the lower middle class who could get work, but just think they can do better if they come to the West. When they look at the cost of living, they realize, hey, hold on a minute. With this high cost of living, I've come from a very low cost of living place to a very high cost of living place. So unless my income is huge, I'm actually going to have a lower quality of life than I would have if I'd stayed in India. And some of them are coming to that realization, going, no, I'm heading back to India. So it'll be interesting sort of thing there. But it shows that when the handouts and the freebies are taken away, and they're particularly things like Indians that are living 20 to a 2-bedroom apartment, that's supposed to be against the law. But the authorities in the West just want to police those sort of laws. If white people are doing it, they will. But if brown people are, they won't. But if those sort of things were cracked down on, and they had to pay commercial rates of rent for no more than 3 or 4 people or something in the apartment. If these sort of things were imposed, then we'd find that a lot of people who would come to the West, would decide that, because they're only here as freeloaders, they're not here to contribute or anything. Then they would decide of their own volition to remigrate themselves. And this comes back to, if we look at situations where, say, if Mr. Trump becomes president again, which is increasingly looking likely, although the hysterical efforts they're making to stop him is very sad to watch. The lawfare and all sorts of sleazy means they're trying to nobble him. But if it's unattractive for these migrants to stay, that is, say there's a tax on all remittances they send back to the home country, these types of things, then a lot of them will remigrate voluntarily. If there's a real crackdown on employing illegals, if they haven't got a legitimate social security number, the company can be fined $1 million per person, those sorts of things. Then a lot of these people that are working under the table illegitimately will have to go back. And so millions upon millions of them will then go back of their own accord, which will prevent the optics of people being grabbed and forcibly removed. So anyway, you've been a Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.